Mr. Mott, welcome to my home in Hanoi, Vietnam, and today I'm going to talk about what you see here. This is the Hasselblad X1D system, and this is the exact system that I use on all my hotel and resort shoots. My business, Mott Visuals, we are an official approved vendor for Intercontinental Hotels, and I've personally shot over 30 different hotels for them around the world using this system here. I'm going to quickly go through the lenses, I'm going to tell you about their mobile app, and I'm going to tell you why I chose this Hasselblad X1D, a medium format system for my commercial photography, so stay tuned. Now, I went against my own advice when I bought this system. I bought it right when it came out. It was really hard to find, actually. It was hard to buy. They only had a few of them. Most camera stores only carried like one or two of them. I couldn't even get it in Vietnam. I had to go to Singapore just to buy it. I normally say don't buy the first generation of a new system, the first generation of a new kind of technology. And this was a new system, a new type of technology, a whole new lens kit, a whole new setup for Hasselblad. Now, the Hasselblad system has never been that appealing to me because I've typically seen it as a studio camera for fashion photographers or people doing really high-end production in a studio. I never saw it as a field camera, and that's what I'm doing. When I go to hotels, obviously I'm out in the field, I'm shooting indoors, I'm shooting outdoors, but we're never working in a studio. So I never really considered Hasselblad as an option. But when they released this bad boy, I thought, wow, that's interesting. I was intrigued. I did a little bit of research on it. At the time, there wasn't much research out there about this camera, but it was exciting. It was really expensive at the time. It's come down quite significantly in price. That impressed me about this camera when I saw it. The first thing that really caught my eye was the size of the sensor. I mean, check that out. I'll show this up next to a Canon sensor, but whoa, it is gigantic. The sensor is huge. It's not the megapixels, it's the size of the sensor. I mean, but the second thing was the portability of this system. I mean, look at it. It's beautifully made, beautifully designed, and it can just fit in your hand. It's not tiny, but it fits nicely in your hand. You can go out and shoot handheld. This is very, very portable. So that's what first intrigued me about this camera. So here I am 2 years later. I just want to tell you some of the lenses I have, how I use them, what I like about the system and what I don't like. Now, just so you know, Hasselblad does have an X1D Mark II, and they have worked out some of the bugs. I use this kit for mostly my hotel and resort photography. And not just Intercontinental, we do other luxury hotels and resorts as well. So I use this camera on a tripod, and I also use it handheld. And so what I use it for is interior shots, exterior shots, multiple exposure composite shots done on a tripod. I also use it handheld for my lifestyle shots. Before I go into lenses and how I use them, before I show you some of my pictures that I've taken with this camera through the years, I'm just gonna go through quickly what I don't like about it and what I like about it. So what I don't like about it is the autofocus system. It is slow, it does swim. I think it's probably better on the X1D Mark II, but it's not horrible, it's just not great. If something moves really quickly, you're not gonna nail it. Everything about this camera is slow, including the autofocus. Startup time, slow. You know, to review the images can take a second. Swiping takes a second. So everything's a little bit slower on this camera, but it's not meant to be a fast camera. You're not meant to shoot action or fashion or something like that with it. The kind of camera that's meant when you wanna work slowly, which I like. It forces me to think. It forces me to value each shot that I take and not just consistently overshoot. Still trying to figure out if I could use this for everything, and I wasn't loving the autofocus, but eventually I adapted, eventually I worked around the autofocus problems by just basically, when I'm gonna get my shot, I tap in, I zoom, I focus. Instead of shooting like this, which I'm normally used to, it took some time to adjust, but what I started to do is tap the screen. It does have a touch screen here. Tap, move in, focus, and then tap back out and take the shot, really. So I use this handheld sometimes for model shots, and I use it on a tripod for architectural shots and interior shots, or what we call like kind of product shots, so shots of the rooms and things like that. Now, the other thing I don't like about this camera was there was a lot of bugs when I first bought it, and there are still some as well. Firmware updates have fixed a lot, but in the beginning when I bought this camera, it would just say lens not attached, it just wouldn't start up sometimes, it just wouldn't fire sometimes. Everything could be fixed by the old remove the battery, put it back in. And so that was a problem in the beginning, the autofocus and just the fact that the camera is slow, and I am used to working fast. You can see I talk fast, I like to work fast, but this camera actually did force me to slow down. But those are the only two hiccups with this camera. Once I learned that I couldn't use the autofocus system that I wanted to, and I had to sort of plan a little bit more and use the touchscreen more and work like that, everything was fine. My only real complaints about this camera, now the pluses of this camera, the reasons I'm actually talking about, the reason I've been using this camera for 2 years. So a quick funny story about using this camera and how much I've used it. I do feel at this point in my life, I've probably used this camera more than like 99.9% of people that have actually used this camera. It's not like being cocky. I just think I've used it so much that I do think I'm kind of an expert on this camera. So funny story, I'm at B&H in New York City. I'm on vacation. I went into B&H. For those of you that don't know, B&H is like a mega camera store in New York. It's awesome. If you've never checked it out, go to bnhphotovideo.com. Really cool store, gigantic, cool rail system with the way they deliver your products. But it's just the massive size of the store and how much stuff they have and the experts they have in each department is fascinating. So I was in the used section looking at a used Leica lens, and I saw the guy was selling a Hasselblad X1D. And I was talking to the guy that worked there a little bit about my work, and he was like, oh, wow, you use that camera quite a bit. Like, I haven't really met a lot of professional photographers that used it, and we were just sort of going back and forth, and he was really nice, asking me a lot of questions. And as we were talking, this like fashion photographer, like very typical fashion photographer came up, and he was such a like New York fashion photographer. Like, I don't look the part of a photographer, so most people don't take me serious. Honestly, even when I do hotel shoots, it's kind of funny because like people expect me to show up. I'm shooting these rooms that cost a few $1,000s a night sometimes, and the GMs or the marketing people expecting me to show up and have like this awesome tan and be really fit and just have like a flowing linen shirt. And in fact, I'm like not really tan, I'm very pale, and I usually wear like, you know, just dark t-shirts because I'm gonna sweat a lot. And I'm not like in shape, and I don't look like they expect me to basically look like a male resort model, and I don't. They're always disappointed. I always feel like I have to prove myself. It's like, well, I still take the pictures that you saw on my website that you like. Anyway, different story. But while I was at the store, this guy comes up and he was interested in the Hasselblad X1D, and the guy that worked at B&H was like, oh, funny enough, like talk to this guy. He's like the expert. And he kind of looked at me, and I was about to give my advice, and he just kind of walked away. And I thought, wow, it's funny. Like that guy the guy had said that his rep sent him to go look at this camera. I mean, it was pretty cocky to say that. He belongs definitely on my cocky list. He told the guy that works, like, my rep sent me to go take a look at this X1D. And I was like, oh, I've used it for a bit. And I was dressed just like, I don't know how I was dressed, just normal, probably black t-shirt and jeans or something like that. But he just kind of gave me one look and was like, didn't want to hear anything I had to say. And actually, guy in New York City, I was probably the exact person to talk to about this camera because I've used it so much. I've used this camera for so many years on so many shoots. Anyway, that's just a quick story about never judging a book by its cover. Or never judge a Justin by his clothes, or a photographer, whatever. Let's get into this camera. So I told you what I don't like about it, the autofocusing system and the bugs in the beginning, which some of those things have been worked out. But now what I love about this camera, first of all, is the design. I really, really dig the design. You guys have heard me talk about that before. I love design, but that's no reason to spend that much on a camera. It's part of the reason for me, and some of you it doesn't matter, but for me, the design is amazing. This feels so wonderful in your hand. It's like this really fantastic aluminum there, or if you're from outside the United States, aluminum. I guess you guys are right. Made in Sweden. See it there? But it just has a great feel in your hand. The grip is awesome, and the design is awesome, and that little orange button, I love that. It's like, you know, Leica has a red thing, Hasselblad has a little orange button there. So the design on this is so, so gorgeous. People love to comment on it when they see it. The screen is really nice in the back. I love the screen. This camera is the menu system. It sounds weird as well, but menu systems are important. Like, have you ever opened up a Sony menu system? Like, I know people that still haven't gotten out of that system. They're lost forever. We'll never find them. No, but like the Sony menu system is awful. Like they make great cameras, they have great technology, but their menu system is horrible. You get lost in their submenus of a submenu of a menu of that. This menu system is so cool. Like it's just so intuitive. Not only is this the best menu system I've ever used on a camera, this is probably the best menu system I've used on any bit of tech ever. It's so easy and intuitive, and like everything is gorgeous on it. Even the fonts and the little icons, everything is just really nice. Like it's so simple and easy to use. I'll show you a little bit closer on that, but you know, everything is really, really intuitive and simple. For photography, like all the settings I need are right in there, very easy to find, very easy to customize and move around. So the design and overall, the design of the extra and the design of the actual menu system I love. Now the guts of this camera, what's really important and why you buy it is the 50 megapixel medium format sensor. I showed you how gigantic this sensor is, and the first time my retoucher worked with these files, she said, we're just using the Hasselblad from now on, right? I said, why? I was like, well, I'm testing it out. I don't know if I'm going to use this. And so she's like, can we just use those files? They're so awesome to work with. She was so impressed with the files. Some of our shots, we're doing quite extensive stuff. Like if we're doing a commercial shoot, if we're doing like an ad campaign or a billboard, and we do have to change out, like remove stuff and add in these different layers of different skies. We like to shoot as natural as possible, but really some clients do want that. Some clients want a lot of fake skies and a lot of retouching. Having a great file to start with is important, and she was just blown away by this file. When she first got the files from the Hasselblad X1D, she was blown away and asked if we could just continue to use this camera from now on, which eventually we did. It is a 50 megapixel sensor, and it is the same sensor you can find on some of the Fuji medium format cameras, so I understand that. Some people say, well, the cost of that is cheaper. Fuji has more lenses, the lenses are cheaper. I understand that, and that's fine for some people, but for me, I really like the design of this. I also like the natural color that comes out of this camera. The Hasselblad color system, Hasselblad profiles are really nice. The color that comes out of this on skin tones and just the overall color in general is absolutely to perfection. It's just the style that I like. It's what works for me. for me. The files are gigantic, and that's, again, like I said, that's not a problem with Hasselblad. It's just because it's a medium format sensor and it's 50 megapixels. But what that does lead to is extra cost. I have to buy expensive memory cards. I have to buy large memory cards. So I've got two 128s in here. I have two card slots in there, which is great for professionals because you want to mirror your backups. If something were to go wrong with one of your cards and you're on a professional shoot and you spend a lot of money in the models and it's just a lot at stake, you don't have everything backed up on two cards, you're kind of screwed. So in addition to buying faster memory cards, bigger memory cards, you also have to buy faster hard drive. You have to make sure your processor can handle it. I've edited most of these files on a maxed out MacBook Pro from 2016. It was fine. It was a 16 gig MacBook Pro. The color, I like the design, I like the menu system, and just overall the files are amazing. So I've been using this for 2 years. I'm gonna show you right now just a couple photographs that I've taken with this camera through the years. Here's some lifestyle shots I'm gonna mix in here. You know, these are all taken in different shoots in different countries. And I'll mix in some interior shots and exterior shots. Some of these are done in multiple exposures. So I would say if you're gonna shoot with this camera and you're gonna do interiors, get a big tripod, get a hefty tripod, because a little bit of shake on this will ruin your shot. You know, if you don't have it set right, or if you don't have a sturdy tripod and someone steps on the ground near it and it shakes, you could mess up a shot, especially for us because we are sometimes doing these composites. Like I might be shooting a giant lobby and it might be a composite of about 40 images and it might take about an hour to do. So we use a really, really sturdy Gitzo tripod. I did a review about that tripod. It's called Mega Tripod. It's not the official name, but you can check that out. You can check that out in the playlist, but I would recommend a very sturdy tripod. I used this in the beginning with a smaller Gitzo travel tripod just because I wasn't aware. I never shot with medium format, and the tiniest bit of vibration or someone stepping on the ground like I mentioned, or we just nudge a little bit, could ruin the whole shot, and it had ruined the whole shot a couple times for me. So don't make the same mistake I made. Get a solid tripod. I do recommend that Gitzo tripod, Mega Tripod. That works for me, and it works for me with this system. Let's get into the lenses. We're all Hasselblad lenses. These are all part of their XCD kit, and they're all compatible with the X1D system. They're made for the X1D system. You can put other Hasselblad lenses on here with an adapter, so if you have an older system or a different medium format system, you can buy an adapter and put them on there, but I didn't have that, so I've just been using these XCD lenses, which are natively built for this X1D system. And then again, when I bought the system, I was nervous because you never know if these systems are gonna work. You never know if the company, especially a smaller company like Hasselblad, you never know if they're gonna stay with the system. So I was nervous that if I'm gonna invest in this and the lens system didn't grow and they didn't make a second generation of this camera, I'd be kind of screwed. But luckily they have. Luckily people have been buying it, I think, because their lens kit has grown exponentially and they do already have a Hasselblad X1D Mark II, which I'm excited to check out. When I do, I will do a review. So here are the lenses, and here are the equivalents of the lenses in full frame. 30 millimeter I have here is about the equivalent of a 24, and that's a 3.5. And the next lens I have here is a 90 millimeter, and that's a 93.2, which is equivalent to about a 77. This is a 21, which is a f4, which is the equivalent to about a 16 millimeter, and this is a 45, which is the equivalent to about a 35-ish. So how do I use these lenses? And I'll show you some examples, and I'll show you some of the shots that I've taken with these lenses and how I use them. In the beginning, I just had the 45 and the 90, which was tough because it wasn't really wide enough to do room shots. So before I could actually take this on a real job with me, I had to wait and get the 30 millimeter. So, okay, I'll start from my right to left here. So this is the 45. I use this like I would use any 35 millimeter, really. I use this when I want more of a pullback shot with the models in it, but really want to showcase the architecture, the furniture, and the overall ambiance of the resort. So I use this lens quite a bit. It's nice. It's a nice lens, super sharp. Again, the build quality on the lenses is nice. The rubber feels nice, but they are really expensive. Everything with Hasselblad is expensive. It's just like Leica. Like every little thing is expensive. But for me, it's actually worth it because in the end, I use this quite a bit, and it did pay for itself quite quickly. And I've got here a 21 f4, which is really wide, and it's almost to the point of too wide, a little bit distorted, but listen, I do get clients that want those mega wides or some rooms that are just gigantic, huge suites and things like that. So this lens does come in handy. I like to shoot most of my interiors with the 30, again, equivalent of a 24. But when I shoot the 30, I feel like it's a nice field of view. It's wide enough without getting too much distortion. We use this we use the 21 for a lot of interiors and exteriors and stuff like that. I don't use it often with people in it because it will sort of distort their features. The next lens here, I use this quite a bit. This is the 90 millimeter. Love this lens. This is sort of my hybrid lens. It's not too long, but it works great for all of our lifestyle stuff. So think about people checking in, shots of the models in the pool. Anytime I want that compressed look, something a little longer. It's not crazy compressed. It works for me, and it works within the style that I like to shoot. So I use the 90 quite a bit when I'm shooting lifestyle shots, anything with models in it. And this is probably what I use the most. This is the 30, again, equivalent of a 24. It's just that nice balance for interiors without distortion, gives a real point of view. Again, all the shots shots that we're going for with our hotel stuff, we want it to be as realistic as possible. Now I mentioned sometimes clients want heavy retouching, and we are capable of doing that, but we do push for natural light with our photography most of the time, and clients seem to like that quite a bit. So as much as I can shoot with natural light, and much as I get away with, I do, and this camera is great for natural light. It's also great for lighting as well. So I do need to use lighting when it's a necessity for our interior room shots or composite shots. We're lighting different bits of the room. I use a Profoto system. It has a nice little air trigger. It has a nice little trigger that can go here, wirelessly control my Profotos. And the other thing that's nice about the Hasselblad system is all these lenses are leaf shutter. So the shutter is actually not built into the camera. It's built into the lens itself. So the leaf shutter allows you for faster syncs, but it does come in handy when I'm shooting portraits and things like that. Last thing I want to talk about the system was something I actually didn't expect to use in the beginning. I actually didn't even know it existed. It wasn't a reason why I bought it, but when I started using it, really began to like it, and I use it all the time now. And I actually can't imagine using this system now without this. It's the Hasselblad Focus mobile app, which is great. So I use it on my iPad. We have a dedicated iPad that we take on shoots. I use the Hasselblad app right here, and I can control this camera wirelessly with this app. You think, why would you need to do that? Well, when I'm shooting handheld, no, but if I'm doing long exposure shots, what I do is sometimes I'm setting the camera up so high on mega tripods, sometimes I just don't want to get near the camera because, like I said before, the tiniest bump or the tiniest vibration can throw off the shot. So I set the camera up, I dial in my settings, so I don't even need to dial in my settings. I just dial in the focus, and then I can do all my settings here. It works flawlessly, like it's great. Another great thing about this system as well is I don't actually like to shoot tethered, like with a wire. It just doesn't work for me. I shoot on the go. I move around a lot. And yes, sometimes clients do need to look at your picture. It's part of their job, so they need to look at your images. But if I'm shooting tethered, it limits where I can move, and I'm not really being as creative as I want to be. So having a wireless system, something that I can tether to, I can take pictures of this, connect this wirelessly. The quality isn't great. You're not getting these like super sharp images on here, but the client can get a feel for the shot if they wanted to move something or change something around. But it just gives the client an idea of what you're capturing, gives you an idea of what you're capturing, and it just allows you to work remotely when you need to. So I really, really dig the app, and overall, I just really like the system, or else I wouldn't have been using it for so many years, and I'll probably at some point upgrade to the X1D Mark II. Now, who is this camera really for and who it's not for? Now, I've already told you, I've already explained why it's for me for hotel photography and resort photography, because the files are great, you know, and it works well. I had to adapt a little bit, but it works great for me, and it's worth it because these shoots are big, and we do a lot of them. I was able to justify the purchase because, like I said, it's not just expensive for the lenses and the body, everything else that goes along with it is expensive. I could also see this being great for the hybrid photographer, the photographer that's working high-end stuff, product stuff in the studio, or high-end stuff outside the studio. So the hybrid photographer that's working in studio and on location, because it's small enough to take on location, but it's also powerful enough in the studio as well. And it does have the leaf shutter built into the lenses, so you can sync at a faster speed with your strobe. So it's great to get those like really, really fast aperture shots in the studio, you know, really shallow depth of field, and syncing that with your Profoto lights or whatever lighting system you use. I also see it being a great camera for people that are going out and doing landscape or nature photography at a higher level. Like if you're gonna sell prints and you're gonna sell really big prints, you will love this camera because you don't need the fast autofocus if you're doing these landscape shots. You do have time to set it up, and you will love the color, and you will absolutely love the files on this camera. So if you're selling prints at a high price, or you're selling prints or you wanna grow into that, I could see it working well for you. This camera isn't for most people just because it's so expensive and the files are so unnecessary for some people. But you know, for the professional photographer out there that is making money off of their work and is doing high level work, you know, big ad campaigns and things like that, I could see the benefit of having this camera and this system. It has worked great for me. I really, really love it. Again, I told you just a couple little hiccups on it. Overall, love the camera, love the Focus mobile app. The lens system has grown exponentially. Hasselblad has invested in this system. So this X1D and XCD lens ecosystem has grown quite a bit. So it seems like something that's gonna catch on. For professional use, great. For amateurs, if you have a ton of money and you think you're gonna print your images, sure, go for it. But if you're not gonna print the images, I think you're really wasting your money on this camera, because that's really where you see the difference in this. When you print these pictures out, wow, the detail on them, it is so crisp. The detail, the color, everything is amazing. So anyone that's gonna print images, and if you can afford it, go for it. And professionals out there, if you're gonna print images and you're gonna sell them at a decent amount of money, for commercial photographers that really, really care about those fine details, and their clients are gonna print billboards or just really, really big posters or things like that, you will appreciate the files on this camera. You will appreciate the navigation system. You will appreciate the aesthetic of this camera and the design of it overall. So that's my review of the Hasselblad X1D and the Hasselblad XCD lenses that I have here. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. So just leave you with a couple more pictures from my hotel and resorts business, Mott Visuals. You can check out my website, www.mottvisuals.com. And thank you for joining me today, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Take it easy.